ever 6-meter jump, a new world record set in Paris, July 1985. It is probably the best photograph ever taken of the pole vault. Why do I claim that? Well, it contains every element that you should be looking for in the instant of takeoff. We see a strong body position, the right arm as high as he can get it, the heel tucked under the butt, the left leg completely extended. But more important, the pole is still essentially straight, all the way from the tip to his left hand. The left leg is completely extended, and you can see when you look at the toe, he is at least 4 inches off the ground. This is what we can call a pre-jump takeoff. He himself made the point that he strived for it on every jump, but managed it only a few times in his career. Here we have this amazing jump of 601 or 640, depending on your bias, in Athens in 1997. And we see now that the takeoff is not an instant, it is a phase. And in the first part of this phase, he transfers all of the kinetic energy of the run-up into the pole. Obviously, this is critical. Tremendous mass hitting the pole is going to force it to bend, and it's going to force it to roll up and forwards, which is what he wants. He wants to move the pole, not to bend it. Now he drives his chest up through the opening shoulders, and this is critical because it sets up the second phase of energy input. His left leg is now in a position to execute a whipping swing all the way above his head, and that positions him for the third and fourth phases of energy input. Well, that's Bubka. Fantastic. But what about ordinary young athletes? Here we've got 15-year-old Jamie Scroop. We saw her earlier jumping in the World Youth Championships in Sherbrooke in Canada. What about that position? Complete extension of the takeoff leg and ankle, the arms driven high, the right knee punched up, and she's now in a position to execute the long whipping swing that we would like to see from all of our athletes. Just a fantastic position for a young girl, which shows you and tells you that if she can do it, any young athlete can do it. Well, now we have Patrick Jesser. It's an amazing photograph, really. Not in the Bubka class, but still pretty incredible, because here we have a young man attempting a PR in the Olympic trials, and yet he's managed still to ensure a free takeoff. You can see the pole is absolutely straight. It's quite incredible, because most young men under pressure, and young girls for that matter, their first response is to try and bend the pole just that bit more at takeoff. Patrick's resisted that because he's had several years of training, and now you can see this beautiful position. The left arm is a little bit wide, but the pole is being loaded now by the top arm, and the left leg is moving into position for that long swing that we keep talking about. You must always see the plant in relation to the run and takeoff, and then the second phase of energy input. It's very easy to be picky when you watch athletes perform. And here we can say, well, his left leg is a little bit too straight. What we would ideally like to see is a bit of flexion at the knee of the left leg, because this would enable him to accelerate it more, just like somebody kicking a soccer ball, which would enable him to put just that fraction more energy into the system, and this would enable him to sweep upside down without flexing his knees. Now, by our standards, Chris Lovell has run himself under. But you have to understand the context of the jump. He's trying for a PR at 16.9, 5 meters 10, and if he gets it, he will be going to Santiago. It's also his third attempt. So if you know anything about pole vaulting, you'll understand why he's run himself under, perhaps minimally, maybe an inch or two, but it's not what we want. However, he's still in position for a free takeoff. The left arm's high, and the right arm is flexed so that as he takes off, in a complete extension of the body, the right arm can go back over his head, and he is now set up for the long whipping swing that we're looking for on every jump. Now we move to Tom, Chris's twin brother, and we see the most incredible photographs here. Here is a young guy who's been vaulting for about 4 years as an amateur, executing what can best be described as a pre-jump takeoff. It's quite incredible. The pole is not loaded. And what's important about this is that because it's not loaded, he has not had to waste any of his speed in forcing the pole to bend. He simply runs in, takes off, loads the pole while he's in the air, and it immediately starts to flex. That is what a free takeoff is all about. Now this photograph and the following photograph will be a body blow to those people who believe that it's impossible for young athletes to jump like Bubka, and specifically to achieve a free takeoff or even a pre-jump. So when we look at 20-year-old Wendy Young, we see again an amateur athlete who's trained fairly seriously, but look at where she is. She's clearly 2, 3, 4 inches off the ground, and the pole is not loaded. She's stayed behind it, and she is in position to execute a really fine jump. So we say again, young athletes can master elements of the Bubka technical model. Lauren Ely appears not to have a great takeoff. She certainly is not as strong with the left arm as we would like. But what's interesting is she drives the chest up through the arms, and the pole again is hardly loaded. Although she's coming off the ground, you can see a minimal bend in the pole. This is because she's been able to take off free, and now she exploits her ability to move the pole in the second, third, and fourth stages of energy input. We see the basic drills. We go back to these same drills again and again and again and again. If you want to learn to take off, you must first learn to take off effectively with a stiff pole. Do not try and learn to take off with a flexible pole. And here it's worth noting that Bubka, even after he'd set multiple world records, would execute 30 to 50 jumps off 6 steps with a stiff pole, just taking off or over a bar or doing other drills. And here we have Lauren Ely executing again the most simple little drills. It's a 6-step drill, and she's having to drive off as hard as she can to move that pole. The game is to move the pole. That one she did with a slight flex in the pole, but no attempt made to bend the pole. The pole is bending because she is doing the right things, taking off tall and staying behind it. Here we see the repetition of that same drill, but she is doing the same things. Taking off, tall, staying behind the pole, full extension of the takeoff leg, right knee driven, staying behind the pole, staying behind the pole, staying behind the pole until she swings late and turns to land on her stomach. A lovely drill, that one. The youngsters love it. Again, we come back to the basic elements. Taking off with a stiff pole and staying behind it. If you want to learn to bend the pole and to take off effectively, you must execute these same little drills. And here we see the great athlete, the great one, Yelena Isinbayeva, doing the simplest drills. Takeoffs into a sandpit, staying behind the pole. High hands, complete extension of the takeoff leg, punch the right knee up, soft left arm, rides the pole through. Doesn't get it perfect all the time, but it's the repetition that makes her a great athlete. And there's little doubt that if she can improve her takeoff, her run and takeoff, which is what Petrov is working on now, she certainly has the potential to jump 5 meters 20. So if it's good enough for her, it's good enough for anybody. So let's watch this great athlete executing the same drills that young athletes should be carrying out.